Uh-oh. Okay, we'll start with this. This weekend in Germany, for the first time, an undisputed champion will be crowned in the women's minimum weight division when champions Tina Rupprecht and Sumire Yamanaka collide. Let's get right down to it. Tina Rupprecht, 32 years old, is an orthodox fighter, whereas Sumire, 23, considerably younger, is a southpaw. Tina is the more experienced fighter of the two, having been a champion at two weights, sporting a professional record of 14 wins with 1 loss, 1 draw, 3 knockouts, having never been knocked out in 16 professional bouts. She has 2 times as many fights as young Sumire. Sports an unblemished record of 8 wins with no losses, no draws, 3 knockouts. It's commendable that Sumire managed to become a world champion so young and so few pro fights, but that's working against her in this one because now she's facing a better fighter than any fighter she's ever fought, and she doesn't have the experience for this assignment. She was last in action in January of last year opposite the ring, Mika Iwakawa, and she was actually supposed to box on Tina Rupprecht's undercard late last year against former champion Fabiana Batiki, but Fabiana fell ill and Sumire was not able to fight, and thus she's going into this fight with Tina off over a year of inactivity, whereas Tina hasn't been out anywhere near as long. She last fought in November. She spent all of last year taking on world champions. The first was Fabiana Batiki for the WBC. The second was unified champion Iri Matsuda for the WBA and WBO titles. And now all she has to do is defeat Sumire for the IBF. The last missing puzzle piece to complete the set and crown an inaugural atom weight champion. Because there's never been one before. The winner of this fight will be the first. So what do we need to know about the lesser-known Sumire Yamanaka? Believe it or not, at only 8-0, Sumire's not half bad. She's on the more compact end of the spectrum as far as atom weights go. Short and stumpy, short and stocky, with a lower center of gravity that gives her very good balance. She's got good coordination, good counters. She's a mid-range to inside fighter, and in many ways, she has to be because she's on the much smaller end of the spectrum as far as atom weights go. She doesn't have the height or length to be an outside fighter, so she very much is a mid-range to inside fighter. Just like Tina. Tiny Tina, as she's dubbed. Tina, like Sumire, is a short fighter, compact for the weight, which gives her great balance, lower center of gravity. You notice that she's a little faster on her feet than Sumire. It's not to say that Sumire is a stationary target, because she isn't. They can both move, but Tina moves better, faster on her feet, more explosive. That's moving forwards or moving backwards. Fancy feet give her the ability to cut angles, and I expect that she will against an advancing Sumire Yamanaka. I expect that Sumire is going to try to be the aggressor in this fight. Try to come forward, try to put it on Tina Rupprecht and put her under pressure, but due to Tina's fancy feet, her maneuvering ability, I believe she's going to be able to outmaneuver Sumire Yamanaka, cut angles, and hit her in the blind spots, places that Sumire is not used to having to defend. Sumire, due to her limited experiences as a boxer, is likely accustomed to being the mobile one, the athletic one, the sharp one. Well, she'll be facing another sharp fighter, a fighter sharper than herself, in Tina Rupprecht, who can really move better, I think, than anybody that Sumire has fought so far, move better than Sumire, and punch all the while. I don't think Sumire is going to be used to that. a fighter that brings as much to the table as Tina. What I think is going to be difficult for Sumire is finding Tina because she moves so much, so many different ways, fighting on the balls of her feet while bending at the waist and knees. At a slight crouch, chin tucked, countering the whole time. You try for a shot, you miss, and she quickly responds. While she's moving, staying off-center, cutting angles, and on a hop. The whole time. What I think is going to separate them is Tina Rupprecht's maneuvering ability, Tina Rupprecht's speed, because even though Sumire's fast in her own right, Tina to the eye does appear a smidge faster. And a little longer than Sumire Yamanaka. Just a little. Enough that when she's getting outside on her, she can touch her with punches from a safe distance as Sumire tries to advance. I think Tina's going to win a points decision. I think she's going to out-hustle Sumire Yamanaka. Neither fighter is a knockout merchant, but since they are both action fighters and mid-range to inside fighters, you can expect a fast-paced action fight. Though as stated, what I think is going to separate them is Tina is a little faster, a lot more experienced, and if nothing else, she does have home field advantage. This is going down in her native Germany. I like Tina to win a points decision and become the inaugural atomweight undisputed champion. Should be a good one. Look for this on Saturday. Also set to go down this Saturday, Michael Zerafa's prepared to face Tszyu. Joey Spencer's team are angered over the lack of neutral judges. Michael Zerafa is on standby if it means landing a long-craved fight on minimal notice. The veteran middleweight contender is prepared to face countryman Tim Tszyu should Michigan's Joey Spencer, 19-1 with 11 knockouts, opt out of the Tszyu fight over a dispute regarding officiating neutrality. Tszyu and Spencer are currently due to meet in a junior middleweight bout atop an Amazon Prime card this Saturday evening, U.S. time, from Newcastle Entertainment Center in Austria. It's Australia, you moron. Funny turn of events that Keith Thurman's fight with Brock Jarvis was not aired on the Amazon Prime platform, but this fight will be, yet historically, Keith is the flagship PBC fighter. He's the one who was with them from the very beginning. And his fight ended up on YouTube, whereas this fight ended up on Amazon Prime. The fight with Joey Spencer. Joey Spencer's side contends that they were promised upon first signing for their fight that there would be at least 2 international judges. Jason Spencer, Joey's father and head trainer, insists that Tszyu's team breached that agreement. According to Jason Spencer, the 3 assigned officials are all from Australia. Zerafa, 33-5, with 21 knockouts, is closely monitoring the situation and is ready to save the show in what would be a far more appealing fight on the domestic scene. There's a perception that everything goes Tim's way. Zerafa said in a quote provided by promoter No Limit Boxing, "If Joey Spencer and his team feel the judging situation isn't fair and decide not to move forward, I'll be ready." Tszyu, 24-2 with 17 knockouts, is fighting at home for the first time since 2023. His pair of bouts in the United States last year both ended in defeat, including a crushing third-round technical knockout to IBF junior middleweight champion Bakram Murtazaliev last October in Orlando, Florida. Prior to that, Tszyu dropped a split decision to Sebastian Fundora in March of that same year, which ended his reign as WBO champion. All 3 of Tszyu's fights in 2023 came with a version of the WBO title at stake. He won the interim belt in a March 2023 9th-round knockout of former full WBC champion Tony Harrison in Sydney, his place of birth. 3 months later, Tszyu defended that secondary title in a first-round knockout of Carlos Ocampo at the Gold Coast Convention Center in Broadbeach. The same venue that hosted Tszyu's unanimous decision win over Brian Mendoza later that October, by which point he had been elevated to full WBA champion. Tszyu versus Spencer is a 10-round non-title fight. Such contests rarely come with neutral officials, whereas that would be the standard for a sanctioned title fight. Still, Spencer's team feels they are entitled to a fair shake and demand the matter be rectified sooner rather than later. When we were offered this fight 10 weeks ago, we were promised a neutral judging panel, Jason Spencer told Fox Sports Australia. It was a key term. There would be 1 Australian judge and 2 internationals, yet now, at the last minute, we're being told it will be be 3 Australians. That doesn't work. It's not our agreement. And the fact they're also dropping it on us now, in Fight Week, it just isn't professional. Looks like No Limit Promotions wants to ensure that Tszyu wins this weekend, by hook or by crook. This is a crossroads fight for him. Make a break. And he needs this win. Spencer has never previously fought outside of the United States in his 7-year pro boxing career. He has won 3 straight since a brutally one-sided 7th-round knockout loss to then unbeaten Jesus Ramos Jr. in March of 2023. Each of Spencer's last 2 fights have come in his home state, including an August 17th win in his hometown of Linden, Michigan.
It's Michigan, you asshole.
At 25, Spencer and his team believe there is plenty of fight left in his career. With that came the insistence that they're not just here to make up the numbers, but to shock the world. I'm not saying the 3 Australian judges will cheat, and it's important I'm clear about that, noted the elder Spencer. We aren't here for a paycheck, we're here to win, but already, the odds are already stacked against us. So does Tszyu need it at all, or does he believe he can beat my son fairly? It says a lot about my son's character as a fighter that he takes challenges, fights the best. All we want is a fair shot. Meanwhile, Zerafa is eyeing his cell phone, awaiting that emergency call. The 33-year-old Melbourne native has long called for a Tszyu clash, but feared he'd once again miss out this year. There was talk that, with a win on Sunday local time, Tszyu would seek to resurrect a previously cancelled showdown with Keith Thurman. Thurman was due to take place in March of last year, but Thurman, a former unified welterweight champion, suffered an injury and was replaced by Fundura. Thurman returned on March of this year with a 3rd-round TKO of Jock Bravas in Sydney.
Michael Zerafa fought on that undercard and stopped Basir A in the 7th round of a middleweight bout. Whatever it will take to get in the ring with Tszyu this weekend will not be an issue, whether it's 5 days notice or just 1. If there's a chance to settle unfinished business, I'm stepping up, no hesitation, insisted Zerafa.
Now here's a bit of backstory. Tszyu and Michael Zerafa was supposed to fight years ago, circa 2020, at the height of the COVID pandemic. Due to COVID concerns, Michael Zerafa withdrew from the fight.
Which I thought was bullshit, because Tszyu's not worried about COVID. Why are you?
None of the other fighters on that show withdrew due to the same concerns as Michael. If you ask me, he just got cold feet and used that as an excuse. So if he's now willing to step up, it's because now Tim's not an unbeaten fighter. He's coming off of 2 consecutive losses. To Michael, now is the most opportune time to fight him because Michael is a coward.
This is why I don't glorify boxers and put them on a pedestal. They're opportunists, just like everybody else.
And it just so happens that New Zealand's own Andrei Mikhailiovic has also thrown his name into the hat as an alternate should things fall apart between Tim and Joey Spencer, who's still looking for neutrality. I don't really blame him.
But did you travel all that way to pull out now? Put in all that work over the last 8-10 weeks?
To fly home empty-handed. Are the Spencers gonna stick to their guns on this and leave Australia, or will No Limit Promotions sort this out in time?
Seems like a high-stakes game of chicken. Who's gonna fold? No Limit or the Spencers?
Given that the fight is supposed to be going down on Saturday, we'll get those answers shortly.
Elsewhere in the division, Keith Thurman talks about inactivity, 10 more fights, and a move to middleweight.
The Florida native told World Boxing News that his years of inactivity are over as Thurman plots a solid end to his boxing tenure. The 36-year-old is eyeing the world champions at 154 in the immediate future. However, one time is not averse to moving up to middleweight.
It's either Keith Thurman is letting that victory over Brock Jarvis get to his head, or he's just talking to be talking, because there's fighting Brock Jarvis, who used to campaign as low as 135, and then there's fighting the likes of Carlos Adames or Yanni Bekalimkanulai.
Even Arislandi Lara, at 42 years old, is a much riskier fight than the fight that Keith just had. So either you're letting that Brock Jarvis win get to your head, or you're just saying stuff to be saying stuff. Everything depends on the offers that come his way. After he bludgeoned Brock Jarvis in 3 rounds earlier last month, the victory in Sydney, Australia thrust Thurman back into the spotlight and in the frame to reignite his previously cancelled bout with Tim Tszyu.
Asked what he thinks of the current champions, Thurman informed World Boxing News, Bakram Murtazaliev is strong, has strong output, and has awkward, looping power shots.
Sebastian Fundora, WBC and WBO champion, is a towering inferno, and former WBA junior middleweight champion Terence Crawford, since he's vacated the title, has always been world-class top dog if he comes back down to 154 to compete. On his lack of action, which has limited Thurman to just 2 fights since losing to Manny Pacquiao, he added, "The lack of activity since my first loss to Manny in 2019, and especially after COVID, has been extremely frustrating," pointed out the former unified welterweight champion.
Now, a lot of what Keith Thurman is talking about is contingent upon the size of the bag, the size of the offer. And when you think about Sebastian, you think about Bakram, those fights don't pay that much. You think about a move to middleweight. A fight with Carlos Adames doesn't pay much. A fight with Arislandi Lara doesn't pay much.
You're talking about another 10 fights at age 36, and I'm wondering at that age, do you even have 10 fights in you without getting injured again? Thurman continued, "I'm a man who moves in faith. Every fighter has their own trials and tribulations, and while I know boxing politics have played a role, I'm not here to point fingers. God is good, and I believe the right doors will open in 2025 for my career to rise again." In a widely reported move on World Boxing News, Pacquiao has held long-term plans to challenge former Thurman victim Mario Barrios for the WBC title at 147. However, Thurman was nonplussed when asked his opinion on Pac-Man getting the shot at age 46. "I'm unaware of Manny Pacquiao's intentions of competing for the welterweight world title once again," he said before outlining his own future plans. "I hope to have a long, prosperous career. That said, I see anywhere from 3 to 10 more fights in my future. We'll have to see how things unfold. If the right opportunity comes up at 160, I'll be there, but for now, I plan to stay at 154 throughout this year. After that, a catchweight in between 147 and 160 could definitely be on the table," concluded Thurman.
Keith Thurman can still be an interesting player anywhere at or around these weights, depending on the opponent. For example,
What?
If Conor Benn beats Chris Eubank at middleweight in their upcoming fight, if Conor Benn wins, I wouldn't mind seeing Conor fight Keith Thurman.
And the proposed fight that he's already supposed to have with Tim Tszyu, I still like that fight. It's still intriguing in its own way, but given how injury-prone Keith Thurman has been in previous years, does he really have another 3 to 10 fights in him at age 36?
At the moment, Keith Thurman's next fight is leaning towards Tim Tszyu in the summer, but as always in boxing, nothing is set in stone until the contracts are signed. Thurman is back in contention for a world title shot in his next fight, which could ultimately determine whether Tszyu is in the opposite corner in the coming months.
So look, if he wants to fight 10 more times, he can. And depending on the situation, it could be intriguing. I might be interested. But given that this is Keith Thurman we're talking about, and that he's always been a good talker, more of a talker than a doer,
I wouldn't get too used to the idea that Keith is going to have an extended stay in the sport.
because in previous years he's been an injury-prone fighter, and because Keith isn't stupid, he's actually quite cautious, quite careful.
He always has been. He knows who to avoid and when.
He always has.